Hello, everyone. Thanks for making it. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. My name is Taz. I imagine I'm a new face to some or all of you. I joined Equation towards the beginning of this year in the president role, working with our CEO, Erica, and the rest of our leadership team. I've got the easy job today of kicking us off and getting into our webinar on the hours you're not getting back on Sage 300. Agenda for today, we'll start with a brief overview on Equation. It's been some time since some of you have heard from us. I will then pass the mic over to Brian to get into the meat of our conversation, starting with an overview of Intacct, moving into a comparison of 300 versus Intacct, the key differences between the products, where we see our clients saving time on Intacct. We will show you the tool, give you a live demo of Intacct and show the key differences real time. We'll leave some time for Q&A on that portion, and then share a few 300 resources that are new that we think you'll find valuable. Give a quick teaser on our upcoming webinar on an AI tool we've been building internally called Valet. And if you make it through all of that, we'll have a raffle at the end as a thank you, sharing a $50 Amazon gift card to a lucky winner. So with that, we'll get started. Just as important as the ERP you choose is the team that you choose to support it. We've curated some metrics, statistics here that we believe speak to Equation as a business. As a reminder, we're 100% ERP only business, meaning we just focus on 300 and Intacct support and implementations. Essentially an inch wide and a mile deep as a business, and that gives us a few advantages. The first of which, as you can see in these stats, is experience. We have over 1,000 completed implementations and projects, and the majority of those are fixed fee, meaning before you start an engagement, you know what you're getting, you know what you're paying, and based on our track record, you can expect it to come in on time and under budget. The second advantage is our team. You've worked with many of us, you know that we built this business around you, our clients, the accounting and finance world. 100% of our team has had roles in accounting and finance. Most of us have degrees in those fields, and each consultant on average comes with almost 20 years of experience, which is pretty remarkable. A statistic that's not on here that I think is pretty powerful is our average employee tenure is over 10 years. Brian on our call today just celebrated his 19-year work anniversary, which is pretty remarkable. Sharing all of this to share and to say that you've got an experienced and knowledgeable team behind you, and our mission is to help you get the most out of your system. That's why we're here today, and that's what we want to continue to do. We're more than just implementation and support. Last piece I'll share before passing the mic is we have a number of services that you can lean on us for, one of which is personalization and customization of your systems, modules, add-ons, that type of work. We've got a full-time developer in-house, so any integrations you're looking for, connecting different data systems into your Sage environment, team training and enablement, and of course, support as well. So we are here for you. If that sparks a light bulb, you've got a project you're interested in, you're ready for that migration, you know who to reach out to. All of you know Effie, and she'd be happy to help you with that work. So with that, I will pass the mic over to Brian to dive into the topic for the day.
All right, thank you, Taz, appreciate it. And I will go ahead and start on my portion, which is really kind of talking as Taz mentioned, through some of the key differences of Sage 300 and Intacct. As Taz mentioned, I have been now, as of last week, at Equation for 19 years. So a long portion of that is working with Sage 300 heavily, of course, implementations, development, all of the key components of that, and then moving into the Intacct world. So, with that, I have quite a bit of experience in both products. And so, again, I'll leave a little time for Q&A if you have questions between the two or some of the items I show you here. I'm going to go ahead and, give you time to ask those questions as we go through. So just talking a little bit about Sage Intacct's background. Founded in 1999, it is one of the first pure cloud products out on the market for ERP. So again, born and bred in the cloud, not a hybrid model whatsoever. It was always a pure cloud product, pure SaaS product. Built and developed up through around 2017 when Sage acquired them, put them in their portfolio of ERP products, right? Along with the 300s, the 100s, the X3s, and some of their other ancillary products, right? And they've just kind of really adopted, customer adoption has just skyrocketed. Since then, this is really a large portion of Sage's mid-market solution worldwide nowadays. For the accountants in the world, or on this call, the AICPA has put their full weight behind Sage Intacct. So, that's kind of huge for, I myself as a CPA, this is really sort of the governing body, right? And this is them putting their full weight behind Sage Intacct above all other ERPs as the preferred solution, right? And that's kind of a big one, a big deal I like to always kind of highlight here. Along with, the Gartner G2 customer satisfaction. Year over year, I think going on eight something years now, Intacct continues to win that as #1 customer satisfaction, right? Which is huge across all of those other ERP products. The other thing I'd like to talk about here a little bit is, just the born in that cloud, right? That financial management system, starting with a really core product, basically a core ERP product, your financials, right? Your AR, your AP, your GL, your cash management, and the ability to really extend that, whether it's a vertical industry, whether you need inventory management, whether you need an integrated CRM, whether you need an integrated payroll, maybe you need warehouse management or a scanning solution, or maybe you need budgeting planning. Again, the ability to really scale this system and not be capped at a sort of a legacy model is really important in the Intacct industry, in Intacct world, as they build this product, as they have built this out. So let's talk about some of these components of a SaaS-based system. Pure SaaS-based, browser agnostic, works on Safari, works on your Chrome solution, works on any other kind of, if you're still using Firefox, hopefully not, maybe Microsoft Edge or something to that degree. It also works fully mobile. So great, there's a mobile compatible version. It's not an app, it just changes to that automatically, recognizes whether you're on a tablet or a phone. And also basically, again, can switch to the full site, so full site capable as well. And this is an open API platform. They've started with that from day one. They started with an open API architecture, which allows us to, again, completely customize the system, integrate to nearly anything out there. And I don't exaggerate, right? It's really, if we can push something or pull something from another solution, we can put it in Intacct or we can pull from Intacct, right? And that's that open API architecture. Customizations, enhancements, I'm going to talk through as we get into the product as well. And basically really having a browser-based system allows us to, change words on the screen, change labels, put, maybe a little JavaScript behind a certain field, right? Some rules that maybe even go outside the standard Intacct architecture. We can do that with this sort of open platform. And we've done some really interesting things over the years, and I'll speak to a little bit of that, show you some of that as we get into the product a little further. All right, a few of the differences again with Sage 300 and Intacct. Being a pure cloud product, SaaS-based product, we get 4 quarterly releases automatically applied to your system. And these aren't just upgrades or updates or maintenance fixes. There are weekly Friday maintenance releases. Those just happen automatically. Users don't have to be out of the system or anything to that degree. And that also applies to the releases themselves. But the 4 releases are huge. I'll show you briefly when we jump into the product. These are chock full of updates, new functionality, again, enhancements, right? I get excited for them because it takes me an hour or 2 hours to read through these, right? And really kind of delve in, and then I get to sort of pinpoint certain releases or new functionality or new enhancements that I can reach out to our clients and say, hey, this is really relevant to you if you didn't catch this in the highlights, right? This is coming, and make sure to, sometimes it's something you need to enable and configure. Sometimes it's just there and you can use it. So again, really exciting stuff for large quarterly releases and then weekly maintenance fixes. So no painful, like, hey, everybody's got to be out of the system. We're going to take it down for a while, right? None of those kind of painful manual upgrades. And Intacct is a multi-entity, multi-ledger, and multi-currency system, right? Again, a global product, works internationally. I'm going to get in depth in the multi-entity architecture, right? This very large difference between Sage 300 and Intacct, as is the multi-ledger. This allows us to carry additional books. You'll sometimes hear it called book stacking. Allows us to have our normal accrual book, but we could also have a cash-based book. We could have a gap adjusting book, right? So, maybe we apply certain gap adjustments from our audits to this different book, and then we can layer it. Again, that book stacking allows us to sort of layer in or peel out certain different types of transactions as we see fit. And then we can have user-defined books, right? Again, maybe something like purchase commitments, maybe an allocation or a board management adjusted book, right? So I'll talk more on that as we get in the product as well. But some of these key differences between Sage 300 and in Intacct and that overall architecture of the system here. So let's get into some of the more the weeds, so to speak, of these kind of differences here. So top level versus entity level architecture. I talked a little bit about this with the multi-entity organization type. In Sage 300, you have separate databases, right? So you've got an entity A, you've got an entity B, you've got an entity C. These are different logins. These are different securities. These are individual chart of accounts, vendors, customers, items. Again, you're manually logging into each of those to do inter-entity transactions, right? Sometimes there are other third-party products that can help to automate that, Orchid's product or Sage's intercompany, but those come with limitations and they can be a little complex to utilize. And in Sage Intacct's architecture, we've got a single instance with our entities combined within that instance, right? And what that allows us to have is a shared set of master records at the top level. This could be your chart of accounts. This will be your customers, your vendors, your items, your bank accounts, your dimensions. Now, of course, we can utilize entity level master records if we need to, and sometimes that is necessary, but fairly rarely, I would say, right? In some circumstances, that does make sense, but most often we're going to build this at the top level, and I'll show you the power of that. But basically, that's one set of general ledger accounts, one set of vendors, customers, shared automatically across all entities, right? So one edit, right? Not 10 or 20 or however many entities you may have. Now, of course, these can be restricted, So we can at the top level say this vendor can only be used in this entity. Maybe these items or maybe this customer can only be used in this entity, this general ledger account. So we can do restrictions if needs be, but again, that architecture allows us just a simple maintenance, right? What else does that allow us? Automated inter-entity transactions. That allows us to post an entry, maybe a shared AP bill across 10 entities. If one single entity pays on behalf of the others, then automatically the system will create those inter-entity transactions, those due to, due froms across all your entities, right? I will show you examples of that as we get in there as well. And then that also allows for automated consolidations. Many of you are used to using Excel, or, in some cases you can use Sage Intelligence to build and pull data from multiple entities, but it takes work, right, to do that and to maintain that. Again, if you're adding segments or you're adding entities, that's a lot of maintenance in 300. In Sage Intacct, it's automatic, right? Again, that master, that top level architecture, automated consolidations. And of course, I can, as I mentioned, restrict, report individually, however I need. I can group entities to report on. But this automatic, this concept of automated consolidations is really important here. Again, that sort of ease of use and that customer or the client experience. What else? Data reporting and insights, right? So our native visibility and insights, right? We have real-time visibility, right? And again, we move away from a legacy batch-based system, Sage 300, to real-time visibility. An AP bill is posted. My dashboards, my reports are updated automatically, okay? And again, you can have draft mode and things like that where you temporary posting that doesn't hit the GL. That's fine. We can do that. But again, the real-time visibility is really important. And this allows for, again, dimension-based reporting, multi-book accounting, like I mentioned earlier, native dashboards in the system with KPIs. As I mentioned earlier with that multi-book, one of those is a statistical metric, right? FTE we can track, and then we can do journal entries on those. And then we can combine and compute data with that data with our financial data. So we can have metrics like in a healthcare, revenue per patient, number of visits at a certain site, right? So these are just simple examples, but again, things like this are capabilities within Intacct. Scheduled reports, right? And I'm going to hammer on reporting, of course, because again, 300, it's typically been a pain point historically. So scheduled reports, any report in the system, whether it's a canned GL, a trial balance, a financial report, a custom report, these can be scheduled and delivered to via email to a shared Dropbox or an Azure storage or anything to that degree. They could be stored in Intacct for, again, polling purposes down the road. Historically, maybe I want to store aging reports at a certain date, and then I can reference those at any time, right? Or an inventory on hand report, things like that. So again, that's something that's always sort of an important differentiator from 300. Grant and job tracking, another one, right? Native grant and job tracking. Of course, 300 does have its job, project and job costing module. This is an extension of that, but much more enhanced, right? We've got, the ability to flip it from sort of project and job tracking to grant tracking capabilities, where we can track our incoming grants, we can budget versus actuals. Maybe sometimes we have billing layered on top of that. So that native functionality, no additional modules required there. Automation, controls, and extensibility. So this is some of that native functionality with the SaaS-based architecture, right? Native workflows, accounts payable, purchasing, AP, journal entries. We can enable approvals there. So we can route that based on a dollar amount, based on a department, based on a user and employee management relationship. Right? Bank feeds, native bank feeds. I know 300 has added those. I know there are some struggles with that in 300 today. This has really been around in Intacct for 4 or 5 years now. And that functionality continues to be enhanced, right? Automated reconciliations, right? Even if your bank doesn't support a bank feed for whatever reason, there's a whole, of course, my first mention of AI, by the way, there we go. I will be talking extensively on that too. But there is an AI function that allows you to import any type of report and have that go in just the same functionality as a bank feed would, right? Native attachments throughout the system, accounts payable, bills, journal entries, inventory items, vendor records, customers. We can attach documents throughout the system. Important API capabilities, right? I'm gonna, hammer on that API functionality, embedded AI functionality there. 300, of course, has some imports. Those can be a little tricky. Multiple tabs in a Excel documents. Got to link them together. Errors don't really give you much information when they bounce out of 300. In Intacct, it's really made simple. Single CSV file, or even a drag and drop mapping capability with a REST API service. So, and this exists for almost everything in the system. Okay. And then low code customization, low to no, no to low code even in some cases where we've got smart rules, events. These can be validation rules. Ensure that a vendor always has an email address when I enter a new vendor, or something even much more complex, right? Something like anytime a bill over $10,000 is added, I want an email to go out to the system to XYZ person, right? That's an example of a trigger or a smart event. And then just a lot more extensive functionality after that, which I'll touch on in a little bit here. All right, so I'm going to jump into our product right now. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. And I'm going to go ahead and change one thing here really quickly. I'm going to move my, hopefully you can see that okay. Let me know if you can't, if that's a little small. I'm trying to make my picture a little less prominent there. Let me just move my camera off here briefly. Just so you can get a better view. I'm going to turn my camera off. All right, so in the product here, now let's touch on all the functions that I kind of spoke about here a little bit in depth, a little more in depth, right? I talked about that, that top level versus entity level architecture, right? So as the controller in this particular instance, I've logged in. Here's my top level, right? Now I've got, and this is a demo instance of a healthcare company. You can see I've got multiple entities here, right? Now, this is that architecture. These would be considered in 300 your databases, and you'd be logging into each and every one. Well, in Intacct, I'm logging in at the top level. Now, I can, of course, slide in. We call this sliding into the entity level. As a user, as the administrator, I can absolutely slide into any of the entities. And remember that we can restrict these. I may have users that are only able to work in 140 and 150, my laboratory or my behavioral healthcare, right? So I can restrict a user to only ever access those, right? Now I can even have them access top level and just those two, and they don't see other data at the top level. They only are restricted to the data coming from those two entities. So we have full, internal controls there around restrictions, whether it's a department or an entity specifically. And you'll see in my patient care instance here, and by the way, I can color code these if I wanted to, right? Kind of differentiate from the other entities. So sort of helpful here if I, am logging into multiple entities, I might want to make sure I know which entity I'm in, right? By color coding those. But you can see it automatically by data has changed, right? Here's my top level, and this is that top level architecture I talked about. My data is automatically consolidating, and that is because I have a shared set of chart of accounts at the top level, right? I have a shared set of dimensions. I will speak to that here really quickly in just a moment. But I have a shared set of master records, which means as soon as I enter a vendor, right? As soon as I enter a customer, as soon as I enter or edit an account, that applies to every one of these entities with restrictions, of course, kept in mind, right? And again, that allows for automated consolidations, right? And again, if you click into my entity level, there you can see the differences between the data automatically. That's the filters automatically. Entities cannot see side to side, right? If I'm working in patient care, I cannot see long-term care. I can't see dental practice. I can only see relevant data to patient care. But at the top level, I can come in and see all of it. Now I could come in and group these. I could come in and say, hey, I just want, I could create a group of just my dental practice, right, and my patient care. And then I could apply that group, right? Something like an operating location, right? I can filter automatically. So again, I can report on all these individually as I see fit or as I need to. Okay? That's that top level, master level. All right, as I mentioned, what else does that get us? Interentity, right? So if I come down here and I look at my interentity mapping, I basically come in and set up relationships between our entities. So I will say, hey, entity A can interact with entity B. What are the GL accounts I want to hit, the due to and due froms, right? When I map these automatically with journal entries, with accounts receivable, with accounts payable, the entity is working behind the scenes for us. So I'll pull up an example here of a payment. I paid a bill, or my holding company, I should say, paid a bill, right, on behalf of a few other entities, right? Here's the entry. This is a cash disbursement. This is a payment of an AP bill. And I'll show you the AP bill in an example in a moment. But here are my, basically my entries across multiple entities. The system did this section here automatically. System posted this automatically. It posted the proper due to and due froms across our accounts, okay? And across our entities, I should say. So again, this is all automated. I didn't create a journal entry. I didn't have to create interentity journal entries. This is automated for us. If you looked at my original AP bill as an interentity example, this was, and there's of course our attachments, right? Automated attachments, or native attachments, I should say, across the board. And my bill was a simple bill going across multiple entities or locations in this case. All right. So again, that automated functionality really just streamlines that multi-entity maintenance, if you may have that. Right? And of course, multi-currency we talked about. In multi-currency world, you have a Wanda feed that goes in automatic nightly to give you daily rates, so you don't have to maintain currency tables in the system like you do in 300. So another example of just a streamlined function if you do have multi-currency there. We'll talk a little bit about dimensions very quickly here. Dimensions. So we're moving away from a dimension-based chart of accounts, right? Many of you probably have thousands and thousands of GL accounts, right? This is very common in 300 because you have segments. You have department. You might have site or location. You might have a product line, right? These could be segments. So you've got a 1,000-8-10-12, right? Whatever it may be that you're tracking in Sage 300. Well, we move away, and by the way, you may see some in here. You can use them here to a degree, but we rarely do. Sometimes just to track specific due to froms, or sometimes for bank accounts, things like that. But we really don't need to. Salaries and wages is a great example here, right? I've got a single salary and wages account, expense account. In fact, my entire chart of accounts is only 145 accounts. And why is that? The reason being, we moved to a dimension-based system. Dimensions replace your segments in your 300 account structure, and these enhance the system just really exponentially. This allows us to slice and dice our data any which way we see fit, right? So, and these can be renamed, right? We can call these whatever we want, but our dimensions essentially take, basically replace our segments and then enhance the system for reporting for, approval purposes, workflow purposes, you name it. I've got a really simple department structure here, but I can have parent-child relationships, you name it. And again, customers become a dimension. Vendors, items, locations, projects, or grants become dimensions. What does that allow us to do? Well, that allows us to do things like get a P&L by vendor, a P&L by customer, a P&L by by project, right? You can really mix and match your data any which way. And in fact, I'll come in here, I've got my location dimension set up here, but why don't I come in here and I'll just, quickly add a department dimension. Maybe I'll add, let's see, I'll add a class dimension as well, okay? And again, these can be renamed, class can be product line, and you can add user-defined dimensions, by the way. So, those of you, sorry for you if you're carrying 10 plus segments, that's a lot to maintain. We can add user-defined dimensions if there were a need. But back to this, I can come in and say, hey, in my patient care entity, right? Remember, patient care is a location and or entity. Show me just clinical services, right? Or actually, maybe even better, show me billing and admin for patient care only, right? So I'm combining a location and a department together. Now, no revenue posted to billing and admin, but I do have OpEx, right? And I should have, of course, mentioned everything drill down capable in the SaaS world, right? So I can drill down into that OpEx. I can see my, actuals, prior to today, and I could keep drilling down to the originating entries. Again, native capabilities to export to email. Those of you that are used to exporting out of Sage 300, well, you're used to probably merged rows, hidden columns, a little painful. These export in a perfectly formatted way in which you don't have to deal with that. And I could, of course, as I mentioned, there's native email capability throughout the system. I could fire this off to somebody or multiple people in the system in any type of format I'd like. And that you'll find that throughout the Intacct system here. So again, some of those differentiators, right? Dimension-based system. Again, that allows us to come in and slice and dice our data in all sorts of different ways, right? And I'll show you as we, jump into a reporting section just here really quickly. I'll show you that in just a moment. Multi-book functionality I mentioned, right? The ability to track not just our accrual book, but our gap adjusting book, maybe our tax book or a user-defined book. I mentioned that, right? That we can set up additional books that allow us to report on not just our standard accrual book, but something maybe like a commitments book or an allocations book, right? Or a board management. Again, you really can, think of any which way. A revenue recognition book is another good one, right? So, an ASC 606 or something like that, you could have a book set up just to post specific entries to that book. And what does that allow us to do? Well, if I were going to run a canned GL report or a trial balance, right? Well, I can come in very easily and stack those books. So I could come in and say, hey, I want to run a trial balance for XYZ period, my normal standard accrual book. However, I want to layer in my gap adjusting entries, right? Now I could combine them and just show a total, or I could take that out and say, show them side by side, right? I could stack multiple. Show me my gap and then show me my allocations book as well, okay? So that allows us, all of a sudden, we're now reporting on 3 books at one time. And this works not just in our canned reports, this works in our financial reports, our custom reports as well, okay? So that's that multi-book functionality we talked about. Native workflows, we talked a little bit about. In essence of time, not going to show you that, but those exist for approvals on journal entries. They exist for approvals and bills, payments, purchases, right? Purchasing workflows, right? So I could come in and have, approvals of my purchasing requisitions. So again, you're going to find approvals throughout the system, that native capability there. We talked a little bit about native bank feeds, the ability in our cash management module to connect any bank to one of our checking accounts or any of our checking accounts or our credit cards for that matter. and have those feeds automatically help to reconcile our accounts. Okay, so it's just you know, there's a lot of AI and enhancement on there that helps utilize you know, our machine learning to kind of learn from our matches, and then, you know, assist in auto reconciling as we get more data through the system here. All right, we talked a little bit, and I showed you the attachments. Those are not just on AP bills, but those could be on almost any record in the system, really, and transaction, bank rec backups, right? Vendors, customers, bills, journal entries, right? You know, we're going to find that throughout the system as well. If I go drill into a vendor here, you know, you'll be able to see that I can come in here and attach any kind of document, multiple documents if I'd like. Right, so it's not just on transactions. And again, you know, as I mentioned, the ability to customize these screens, right? You know, this really comes into our platform services, this no to low code we talked about, right? We have the ability to add custom fields throughout. Those of you that are used to optional fields or use optional fields in 300, those can be fairly painful to report on. Right, to allow you to store multiple info, but they create a separate table and they store in a separate table in your database. It makes it really hard to you know, report on those ultimately. In this system, in Intacct, the custom field, as soon as I add a custom field on any object in the system, it becomes part of that object. So there is no separate relational you know, database, or there's no separate relationship set up there. It is part of that new object. I talked a little bit about smart rules. These are validation rules. Ensure this field is filled out. Ensure this dimension is not used with this GL account, so on and so forth. Smart events are triggers. Go hit an external HTTP post, right? Go do, you know, go send me an email when a certain event occurs or condition occurs. Or even more powerful, we can create smart events that go and do another action in this system, like go update this field on a vendor when a bill is posted to this vendor for, you know, whatever XYZ condition, or go create a journal entry for deferred revenue when I post a, you know, an AR invoice, right? That I hit for, you know, XYZ, right? So again, smart events, triggers, right? And all types of triggers. And then it gets even more, you know, more enhanced here when we talk about platform tools. We can build our own applications in the system. Again, you know, we can build entire menu objects here with different functionality. You know, here's a good example. In my demo instance, this is just a custom platform app that I quickly put together in here, right? Which allows me to do an AR payment import or a request import. You know, as a separate, and those already exist as standard imports, but this is just a custom screen within the system. And I'm not a developer, I'm a CPA, right? And these are things that we can build, right? So again, that no to low code is really, really powerful in the system here. All right, and now I'm going to kind of shift. You know, I've been holding off to this point, but I'm going to shift into talking about AI, of course, right? So the all important and all key buzzword, right? You know, artificial intelligence and AI. It is prevalent in Intacct, okay, in various degrees. So I'm going to talk through some of those here. Some of the core capabilities or core functions of AI that are just native to the platform are AI help, right? If I come in, we have, and you may hear it called Copilot. Sage calls theirs Copilot. So I may come in and, you know, come in and say, okay, well, I'll just use one of their examples. How do I set up bill approvals, right? I can, you know, basically it doesn't need to be contextual. I can be anywhere in the system and I can type in natural language. How do I do something, or does this exist, or how can I get to this? And you can see it returns my answer on how to follow steps to approve a bill, okay? And then I can have additional links there as well. So native AI capability in a help function, right? Which is really useful when just asking how-to questions throughout the system, right? Now, some of the other areas that are native, general ledger outlier detection. Within the GL, I can set up outlier detection that essentially will flag anomalies. Maybe I fat fingered a number. Maybe I used a dimension that has never been used in a certain entity before or with a certain GL account. The system will use AI and machine learning to look at historical data and flag anomalies for follow-up. If you say, hey, this is okay, it'll learn from that. That's the machine learning portion. If I say, oh yeah, you're right, this was an error, it'll learn from that as well. So that exists as native core capability. And then I talked about cash management. So we have AI embedded in our reconciliation matching rules, heavily embedded, along with machine learning to assist with your reconciliations, right? And that auto matching capability where you go away from doing match to match to match for every transaction. The system's doing the bulk of your reconciliations for you across credit cards or banks for that matter. What are some other areas of AI? AP automation, right? Embedded AP automation. So with AP automation, I can have vendors email, XYZ email that gets issued to you through Intacct or through Sage, and those will import automatically to the system in a draft mode. They don't auto post. And the system uses AI, machine learning, and OCR to extract the data from those and create a draft bill for my review. Okay, I can also just drag and drop through this screen here as many bills as I'd like, right? Or actually up to 30, I should say, at a time. And it uses that same idea. So that's going to basically kind of read that line level data, that header level data, see if we have that vendor, if we've used it, how have we coded them. Again, heavy enhancements there as well. Close, there is Copilot Close Assistant. That looks at our company setup and our checklists through code, basically to assist with our close process. In part of that is also subledger reconciliation. It will go through and try to match AP subledger to the AP in your general ledger. Same with AR and cash management. It will flag variances and tell you where those variances are found and how to correct them if it can find those, or if you need to follow up and do more work on that, right? So it will get in there and you can see, again, with the Close Assistant, it's going to give you a dashboard. This is not the dashboard. It'll give you a more robust dashboard in this case to kind of track task assignments, who's assigned what the status is, where that is out. That's both Copilot Close Assistant and then our subledger reconciliation, okay? Then we've got our finance, basically our financial intelligence agent or finance intelligence agent, if you want to go that route. So in this case, this works really across most of your modules within the system. Now there's some third parties that it probably will not be able to talk to as of now. That may always change, of course, but right now it's core modules, your cash management, your AP, your AR, your GL, your order entry, your purchasing, right? And this is really a function of something like, hey, you know what? List me, well, I'll give it a better example here. I'm going to say, show me AP bills with attachments. Again, this is natural language queries asking anything in the system. This is not a help function now, although it looks like the help one I showed you. This is basically coming in and saying, show me all the AP bills that exist with attachments. There you can see the 4 results, right? I could drill into any one of those, of course, if I want. And I can see if I scroll over, and I can enlarge this if I wanted to or export. But essentially, it's going to show me all the bills that have attachments here, okay? Maybe I want to do something like, list my manually created journal entries, all right? So I could just go ahead and say, ask for a list of manually created, not imported, not coming from the subledger, right? Oftentimes these cause subledger reconciliation issues, right? So there's a list of journal entries that will cause that, or that are manually entered, I should say. And then they'll create a little analysis for me depending on the question I ask, right? It's going to show you how many lines are showing, what the total dollar amounts are, right? Give me a couple little graphics. And again, this works across all of your modules. So it's just natural language financial assistant. And they give you a prompt library, which I actually really appreciate as well. So I can come in and look at my prompt library and say, okay, you know, show me some examples that I might ask across the general ledger, right? You know, show me GL accounts missing categories. Show me journal entries that are missing attachments. Maybe I require backup, or which ones are in draft entry, right? And so they give you across the various modules examples of prompts to kind of get your brain spinning a little bit, right? And very kind of useful to sort of give you ideas on how to start using Copilot in the system, right? You know, show me reversed entries, show me unapproved journal entries, things like that. I can copy that prompt, pop it right back in, right? Have that system go off and look for, you know, that. And again, you can get complex, right? Mine might have been simple examples. And here I've only got one example, of course. But mine have been simple examples, but you can get very complex. It's natural language. It's AI. It's gonna get smarter and smarter, and it will decipher what you're asking again within your Intacct instance. Okay. So that's our Copilot. There are other features continuing to be developed within the system. One of which is our Sage AI Gateway that allows our LLM tools like a Claude or a ChatGPT or a Gemini to interact with Sage Intacct data through their MCP server, right? And the MCP server is really just a middle layer that pulls an API, or basically it's almost like a guardian, right? You know, from the LLM tool to Intacct, right? It respects all your permissions. You know, that's a read-only currently. Taz here shortly is going to talk a little bit about our tool Valet, which takes that much further above and beyond what that AI gateway, the Sage AI gateway. And so again, just to give you a little flavor of some of the tools that exist, there is a Sage AI agent marketplace being built. Currently, there's only one agent on there, but that is recently released. And again, there will, partners and developers will start to add AI agents to that marketplace as time goes on. They can do all sorts of workflows, and those are built on the Copilot platform, by the way. So those exist and those can be run within Sage Intacct directly using the Copilot function here. Okay. All right, so let's see. Let me double check where we're at timing wise. We're looking good. About to wrap up here. So hopefully it gives you a little taste of Sage Intacct, a little bit of examples of things, that are different between 300 and Intacct. Sage 300, of course, very strong financial system, has been around for years and years now. And we're really just sort of taking that to the next step with Sage Intacct, again, with a pure SaaS-based system. So I'm going to pause now. I'm going to hand it back over to Taz here.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. I hope that got everyone's wheels turning on the work you're doing today, how that could translate to Intacct. I think what we hear time and again from folks that have made the switch is just the time back that they get on the manual repetitive work that they were doing historically, giving them time to move into higher value work on the day-to-day. So thank you, Brian, for the live walkthrough. We are in the home stretch here. Of course, we spent a lot of time today talking through Intacct. Of course, we still provide support and training on 300. Wanted to share some new resources that we've been developing. First of which, on the how-to video side, if you're interested in more of these kinds of videos, live walkthroughs that you can watch and learn on your own time, we have a YouTube channel, a series that you can follow, everything from tariff processing to AR credit and collections tips and tricks. So we will provide these links for you all, but wanted to make the group aware of more content that we have built over time, and some new additions to our 300 training, with a few more coming soon. We also are avid writers and have an ongoing blog on the 300 side. For example, understanding what Windows 10 end of life means for your business relative to Sage 300, and many other topics. So flagging that for the group in case you're looking for more knowledge, more training on all things 300. And the last piece of content, very, very quickly, a teaser for our next webinar. This one on our AI tool that we have been developing here at Equation in partnership with an AI business called Structify. The tool is called Valet. At a very high level, we could spend a whole hour on this, and we will at the end of September. Valet marries the expertise and skill set of our team in the Sage world with the power of AI as it relates to workflows and automations. I'm a visual learner. Picture your Sage environment. Think of all the different data systems and tools that you use today. Many of them are in silos. A CRM in one place, your Sage and financials in another, maybe inventory management in another. The solution that we bridge with Valet and the gap that we saw was, how can we build a tool to connect these systems safely and help you work in a more efficient way with your Sage environment. By way of example, we've been working with a client on building out an internal knowledge base. They call it a brain, essentially connecting to their different data systems, connecting to their Sage environment, pulling it all into one place for their team to either view reports, dashboards, query it in plain English. There's really limitless possibilities for what this tool can do. We're really excited to share more. You can see the list here of examples, just the beginning of what we're discovering with this tool. So keep an eye out on your emails for more details there. And with that, thank you all for joining us. You will receive the recording and the materials via email. Really grateful for your time today, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.